all walked away, nothing to say. They just lost.
What I'm about to tell you will break your heart, but you need to hear it. The man whose voice has carried millions through their darkest moments is now walking through his own valley of shadows. And his wife just broke her silence. If you've ever listened to gospel music, if you've ever needed hope when everything felt hopeless, then you know Guy Penrod. But what's happening to him right now? Nobody saw this coming. Stay with me, because what his wife revealed will change how you see faith, suffering, and the people we put on pedestals. Let me tell you something that most people don't understand about the heroes we admire. We see them on stage. We hear their powerful voices. We watch them inspire thousands. But we forget they're human. We forget they bleed, they hurt, they break just like us. Guy Penrod's wife spoke out earlier today, and her voice was trembling. Not with fear, but with the weight of truth. This has been the hardest season of our lives. Let that sink in for a moment. The hardest season. Not a difficult week, not a challenging month. A season. The kind of pain that doesn't end when the sun rises. And here's what makes this even more devastating. This is a man who has spent decades being everyone else's strength. Now, he desperately needs ours. But before I tell you exactly what the family is facing, you need to understand who Guy Penrod really is. Because this isn't just a story about a famous singer. This is about the man behind the music, and why what's happening to him feels so personal to millions of people worldwide. Who is Guy Penrod?
Their dearest friend. All that he said.
Picture this. It's a Sunday evening in the 1990 seconds. Families across America are gathered in their living rooms, and a voice fills the air. Deep, soulful, unmistakable. That voice belonged to Guy Penrod. As the lead singer of the world-famous Gaither vocal band, Guy became more than just a performer. He became a fixture in people's spiritual lives. With his long, flowing hair, that warm smile that could light up an entire auditorium, and a sincerity you couldn't fake even if you tried, he was instantly recognizable. But here's what set Guy apart from every other gospel singer of his generation: authenticity. When Guy sang about faith, you believed him. When he sang about hope, you felt it rising in your chest. When he sang about God's love breaking through darkness, you knew he understood what darkness felt like. The Gaither vocal band wasn't just making music. They were creating anthems for the broken-hearted, hymns for the weary, and lifelines for the lost. And Guy? He was the voice that tied it all together. Think about your own life for a second. Maybe you heard his voice at a wedding. Maybe it was at a funeral when you couldn't find words for your grief. Maybe it was alone in your car, when you thought no one understood what you were going through. That's the power Guy Penrod had. His music wasn't background noise. It was ministry. It was therapy. It was hope wrapped in melody. Now, Guy didn't stop with the Gaither vocal band. What he did next would cement his legacy forever. But it would also make what's happening now feel even more heartbreaking. Let me explain. When Guy stepped away from the Gaither vocal band to pursue a solo career, some people questioned it. Would he succeed? Could he carry that magic on his own? The answer was a resounding yes. Guy Penrod's solo career became something extraordinary. He released album after album celebrating faith, worship, and the unshakable presence of God. His songs played in churches from California to Carolina. They echoed through wedding receptions and memorial services. They brought peace to hospital rooms and comfort to empty houses where faith felt like it was slipping away. But here's what most people don't know about Guy's solo work. Every single song came from a place of deep personal conviction. This wasn't a man chasing chart success or Grammy nominations. This was a man on a mission to remind the world that no matter how dark the night gets, morning always comes. His voice became the soundtrack to countless lives. A grandmother in Tennessee played his music every Sunday morning. A truck driver in Montana listened to Guy's albums on long, lonely highways. A mother in Florida sang his songs to her children before bed, passing down faith through melody. To millions of people, Guy Penrod wasn't just a musician. He was a spiritual companion, a voice of reassurance when doubt crept in, a reminder that they weren't alone. And that's exactly why what's happening now feels so devastating. Because the voice that comforted us when we were weak is now crying out for our strength. His wife's statement revealed something that nobody expected, something that shows us the truth about suffering, faith, and the masks we all wear. And I promise you, by the time I finish telling you what she said, you'll never look at your own struggles the same way again. The wife's heartbreaking words, 11/30/14/30. When Guy Penrod's wife spoke out, she didn't sugarcoat anything. She didn't hide behind religious platitudes or fake optimism. She gave us something much more valuable, raw, honest truth. Her voice trembled as she opened up about the storm their family is weathering. "This has been the hardest season of our lives," she confessed. And then, she said something that hit even harder. "Guy has always been there for everyone else. Now, he needs your prayers." Think about what she's really saying here. The man who has ministered to millions, who has been the strong voice in everyone else's chaos, is now vulnerable. He's hurting. He's human. She pleaded for 3 things: love, faith, and privacy. Not money, not attention. Just the simple, powerful act of people lifting her husband up in prayer. But here's what made her statement so incredibly powerful. Even in the midst of this valley of sorrow, she declared that their trust in God remains unshaken. Not unbothered, not unaffected, unshaken. There's a massive difference between those words. She's not pretending this doesn't hurt. She's not claiming they're above suffering. She's saying that even when the ground beneath them feels unstable, their foundation remains solid. That kind of faith? That's not the faith you perform on stage. That's the faith you cling to when the stage goes dark and you're alone with your pain. Her message became more than just an update. It became a call to action. She was essentially saying, "My husband has carried you through your storms. Will you carry him through his?" And here's where this story takes an unexpected turn. Because what happened next revealed something beautiful about human connection, about the invisible threads that tie us together through music and faith. What the gospel community did in response will restore your faith in humanity. The response was instant, and it was powerful. Messages of love, comfort, and encouragement flooded in from every corner of the globe. Social media exploded with prayer circles. Churches announced they'd be praying for the Penrod family during services. Fellow gospel artists united in support, reminding Guy that he's never alone. But here's what struck me most: the stories people shared. A woman from Ohio wrote, "Guy's music played at my mother's funeral. It was the only thing that got me through that day. Now, I'm praying for him the way his voice once prayed over me." A man from Texas shared, "I was ready to give up on faith completely. Then I heard Guy sing, and something shifted. I owe my spiritual life to his obedience. I'll pray for him every single day." A pastor from Georgia said, "Guy's songs have been part of our worship for 20 years. Our entire congregation is lifting him up." Do you see what's happening here? This isn't celebrity worship. This isn't fandom. This is family. This is a community of believers who were touched by Guy's ministry, now coming together to be his ministry in return. The gospel community rallied in a way that proves something profound. When you pour love into the world, that love comes back when you need it most. Guy spent decades being a vessel of hope. Now, hope is flooding back to him from every direction. Churches are organizing prayer vigils. Online communities are sharing favorite Guy Penrod songs and memories. People who never met him personally feel connected to him through the music that shaped their spiritual journeys. This is the power of ministry. Real, authentic ministry doesn't just entertain. It creates bonds that last through the darkest valleys. But there's something deeper happening here that we need to talk about. Something about faith, suffering, and what it really means to walk through fire. Because Guy's situation is teaching us a lesson we desperately need to learn. Here's what Guy Penrod's story reveals. Faith doesn't exempt you from suffering. It equips you to endure it. For years, Guy sang about perseverance. He sang about trusting God in the storm. He sang about holding on when everything tells you to let go. Those weren't just lyrics. They were prophetic words for his own life. Now, He's living the very message he preached. And that's not weakness. That's not failure. That's the truest form of faith there is. We live in a world that sells us a false gospel. Follow God, and life will be easy. Have faith and problems will disappear. Believe hard enough and you'll never suffer. That's not biblical. That's not real. That's not how life works. The real gospel says, in this world, you will have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. Jesus didn't promise the absence of pain. He promised presence in the pain. Guy Penrod's journey is showing us what authentic faith looks like. It's not the faith that performs on stage. It's the faith that persists in the waiting room. It's not the faith that sings loudly. It's the faith that whispers, I trust you, through tears. His wife's transparency gave us a gift. She could have hidden their struggle. She could have kept up appearances. Instead, she opened a window into their pain and said, we're human. We're hurting. We need you. That vulnerability, that's more powerful than any performance ever could be. Because now, Guy's entire life becomes a testimony. His songs take on new depth. The words he sang about God's faithfulness aren't theoretical anymore. They're survival tools. They're lifelines. They're truth being tested in real time. And every person watching this story unfold is learning something crucial. The people you admire, the voices you trust, the leaders you follow, they're human. They struggle. They break. They need grace just like you do. But here's the beautiful part. Their humanity doesn't diminish their message. It amplifies it. Guy didn't minister to us because he was perfect. He ministered to us because he was authentic. And his authenticity is shining through now more than ever. So what do we do with this information? How do we respond to the brokenness of someone who once made us feel whole? First, we pray. Not casual prayers, not sending thoughts and prayers while scrolling past. Real, intentional, persistent prayer. The kind of prayer that fights for someone else's faith when theirs feels fragile. Second, we honor his request for privacy. Love doesn't demand details. Love doesn't pry into pain. Love respects boundaries while remaining present. Third, we remember. Remember the songs that lifted you. Remember the moments his voice carried you through. Remember that ministry is a two-way street, and now it's our turn to minister back. Fourth, we reflect on our own lives. Who are we taking for granted? Who do we assume is strong enough not to need our support? Who have we put on a pedestal instead of treating like family? Guy Penrod's story is a mirror. It shows us what we value, how we treat people, and whether we're willing to give back to those who gave so much to us. This isn't just about one gospel singer facing hard times. This is about community. This is about showing up for each other when the spotlight fades and real life gets messy. If Guy's music ever meant anything to you, this is your moment. Not to be nosy, not to demand explanations, but to simply say, you carried me, now let me carry you. The most powerful thing about this entire situation is that it's revealing the true legacy of Guy Penrod's ministry. His legacy isn't awards or album sales. His legacy is the army of believers who are now standing in the gap for him, praying him through, reminding him that he's never alone. That's what real ministry creates. It creates a circle of grace, where what you pour out comes back when you need it most. Guy Penrod's journey isn't over. This chapter is painful, yes. It's heartbreaking, absolutely. But it's not the end. The same God he sang about for decades is still faithful. The same hope he offered millions is still available to him. The same community he ministered to is now surrounding him with love. We don't know what tomorrow holds for the Penrod family. We don't have all the answers. But we do know this. They are not walking alone. They are carried by prayers, surrounded by love, and held by a faith that doesn't break even when we do. When you think of Guy Penrod, don't just remember the voice. Remember the man. Remember the heart. Remember the authentic faith that never promised perfection, but always pointed to hope. And if you've been touched by his music, if his voice ever brought you comfort, if his ministry ever made a difference in your life, then right now is your chance to give that back. Pray for Guy. Pray for his wife. Pray for their family. Not because they're celebrities, but because they're family in the faith. And family shows up. Family carries each other. Family never gives up on each other. This is the gospel in action. Not perfect people performing perfect faith, but broken people holding each other up, reminding each other that morning comes, that hope lives, and that we never walk alone. Guy Penrod taught us that through his music. Now, through his struggle, he's teaching us something even more profound, that faith is real, even when it's hard, that hope persists, even when it hurts, and that love never fails, even in the darkest valleys. His story continues, and so does ours. Let's make sure we finish strong, together.